Certain sites might be more of a challenge than others. Certain sites may have more advantages and be easier to build than others. It's up to the homeowner, the prospective homeowner, to decide how to approach the site selection, whether they want to do it with their own eyes and criteria or employ a design professional. Obviously, it's the most important first decision because everything else follows behind that. Your site selection, your building placement on the site, your site management during construction, leading all the way up to your finished product. All those things are all sequential, but part of the big picture that you ask yourself right up front. If you have the luxury of being able to go and make a decision between 3 or 4 sites, that's kind of fun because then you can make a checklist of criteria and do a test of each property to see which one meets the criteria that you have for the development of your property. We're going to talk a little bit now about building on a tight inner city lot. Now, this is a typical probably 5,000 square foot inner city lot. Close quarters, flat and featureless, nothing to it other than just a flat piece of dirt. The challenges on something like this are a little bit more simplified because you don't have the luxury of having to decide how to orient your house on the property. You're pretty much fixed. But the challenges are for site management. Your contractor doesn't have room to put a job trailer. Location of his porta-can is going to be critical. The location of his staging area, where he stacks his material and how he puts things on the site. It's a lot harder, believe it or not, to keep a small site clean because you don't have the luxury of having lots of places to put things and to clean things up. If you look around you see some of your challenges are staring back at you. And so, for example, you have a 0 lot line over here, and over here you have somebody who did a combination of 0 lot line and then a little bit of a setback, but they chose to put windows right there. And so your placement on this site is going to be sensitive to how you place your windows versus what your view is going to be. The back property back there more than likely is a utility easement, so you're not going to be able to get closer than about 10 feet to the fence. But you also have window issues of what your neighbor's second floor looks at, and are they going to be looking into your bedroom? So the placement on a tight site like this needs to be sensitive enough to consider your design and how it fits onto the site. Small sites like this take away some of your decisions, but because they answer them for you. You know, your setbacks are pretty much set, and so your house is going to be sitting pretty much where it is. So the decisions that you get to make is a shorter list, but it makes it easier for you to get to some design decisions pretty quickly. This is a really good example of a difficult site that could really be a lot of fun to develop. If you look around the site here, it's an elevated site on a creek bed with a portion of the creek that would obviously have been part of the former natural drainage of the community, draining right next to the property. The challenge and the beauty of a site like this is to be able to take advantage of your limitations to do something really exciting. The rule of thumb that I like to follow is that every site has its value. You know, sites like this are opportunities rather than limits, and so they shouldn't ever be discounted as a handicapped site or a site that doesn't work. This is where the beauty of a small, elegant custom home would really show itself the most on something like this. This is a really good example of an oversized inner city lot. It's in a much more mature neighborhood. It's a very large and spacious lot, so you have the luxury that you don't have on one of the small inner city lots that we already looked at, so you can have more fun positioning your house. Here you're not obligated and confined by the fence line, and so you can take more advantage of the sun orientation and wind orientation and maybe turn the house and not be restricted to just facing forward, for example. A big site like this it's actually a very nice luxury to be able to play with the site a little bit more and move the house around. It goes back to the old rule of locating your house as it relates to trees for generating shade. You know, you can save a ton of air conditioning if you locate your house properly to take advantage of natural cooling. So these are all nice advantages when you have a site that's big enough to play with. 50 by 100 lots give you a whole lot more restrictions, but a large lot like this offers up a different kind of challenge that gives you more freedom to play. Site management in a project like this would be just as critical in any other site, because you're still dealing with the noise issues, the safety issues, the security issues, the sensitivity issues to dealing with your neighbors. You know, those are all things that somebody who would be aspiring to build in this market is going to be already sensitive to, but certainly something for consideration when you're interviewing your general contractor. The mature trees on the site give you some advantages and some nice decision making when you're placing your house, but it also gives you some construction challenges for tree protection and making sure that none of the trees not only die during construction but also still prosper for years after you finish the house. And so your staging areas, your construction zones, your foundation placement, and all those things can be determined by protecting and taking advantage of the vegetation on the site as much as you can. Something that should be noted about this site that is given to you by the fire hydrants. The base of that fire hydrant tells you what your minimum finished floor is. So any construction that takes place on this site is going to have to be raised to at least the top of the bottom flange of that fire hydrant. And so that's going to involve some fill, some raising to get up to that finished floor, which will obviously impact drainage and other things on the site. But that's a good telltale sign to look at when you're looking at a site that gives you a little bit of an indicator of what the site development conditions are going to be on the property. When you're developing in an older community that has old houses like this that you might need to demolish before you can build, there are occasionally restrictions to what your new construction can look like. And so a lot of times there are historical covenants that will require certain architectural styles to blend in with the old neighborhood. Cities that have zoning ordinances are more likely to have that kind of restriction, but that doesn't mean that some cities that don't have a zoning ordinance don't have neighborhood restrictions. Older houses like this have environmental issues to consider. When you develop the property, you'll have to do some assessments of any hazardous waste or anything such as buried trash or debris or anything that might be buried on the site. Anytime you develop a site that has been occupied previously by a house that's either been torn down for a long time or the one that you tear down yourself, there are environmental issues that you do before you start engineering for your foundation. That makes your site evaluation a little bit more intense on the upfront side. The whole exercise of site selection that goes all the way to the simplicity of looking at the local infrastructure and drainage and the existing vegetation, to the more technical stuff of how do you drain the back of the property, where are your utility access points, what are my window design orientations going to look like. All can be worked through very systematically and actually kind of fun. That's one of the fun parts of home design, is that upfront stuff where you're asking those questions, and then everything else from there kind of falls into place.